Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Cieslinski, aka the Running Wine Mom. Joining us today is Lara Aman Matty, the owner of Ivory Tree Portraits, a family and newborn photography studio that's revolutionizing the portrait experience with a unique kid-led philosophy. We first crossed paths at the 2023 Women of Influence Awards, and since then, we've had the pleasure of collaborating on grandparent and Christmas photo sessions, which have come out beautifully. Love working with you. Lara's journey is one of passion, resilience, and empowerment. From her early days in corporate marketing to becoming the driving force behind an all-woman run business, she's created not just a studio, but a space that celebrates families in all their beautiful forms. Today, we'll dive into her entrepreneurial journey, the challenges and triumphs of running a woman-owned business, and her vision for capturing life's most precious moments. So without further ado, let's welcome Lara. Welcome, Lara.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay, I'm excited. So to start each episode, we have our wine, and Wood of the Week segment. This is where we share our favorite bottle of wine, vent about something that has been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So Lara, what's your WINE of the week?
I am drinking Antsfield. It is like the most delicious New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh.
I actually get it from Cornerstone, which is 2 doors down from the Wayne studio. If you haven't been, you have to check it out. They sell wine, they sell cheese, and they're a full restaurant as well.
Mm.
And what I love about this is it is not something I would have just gone out and selected. But they really know me there and they know what I'd like. And they're like, we just got this new bottle. You have to try this. So yeah, so that is my new all-time favorite.
Ooh, I will have to try it because I love me a good New Zealand Sav. They're my favorite. So I will add this to my list of wines I must try.
Very good.
So what is your WHINE of the week?
So we are already knee deep in holiday season at the studio, which really spans from September through December. So
yes, I was September.
The whole thing, right? And so my wine of the week is mamas who aren't being kind to themselves. It's I think that we are harshest on ourselves. Listen, I'm 46, I have the laugh lines. I have, the tiger stripes. I carried 2 children, right? I am not what I was at 26, but the issue that I have with it is kind of twofold. One is they're missing out on the memories because they're not getting it. And I'm like, man, I look back at some of these pictures that I was like, oof, mama's not looking so great when they were babies. And I'm like, my God, I would kill to look like that again, right? And number 2, the kids are listening. Every time we're not kind to ourselves, everything we say that is critical of how we look or what we do, they're really internalizing that. And in a lot of cases, they look like us, right? So, I'm kind of, that's my mantra out there, Mama, be kind to yourself.
That is
you for your kids.
Yeah. And I am sure as a photographer, you see it. And I'm thinking, as you're saying all of this, thinking of myself, of how you just want to look the best that you ever looked. And sometimes, you just look like you. You don't look like a version of you that you aren't. You can't,
Mm-hmm.
And it's so right. And also the other thing is, your kids look like you, but they also might not. So I grew up with a mom that was really, really thin. And anytime she talked badly about herself, it really affected me because I thought, oh, well, if she thinks that she looks bad, then what must I look like? So that's such true words that they are always listening. So yes, be kind to yourself. So what is your win of the week?
My win of the week is our Newtown studio booked out this past weekend. So that's huge for us. We have 2 studios. Thank you. We have one on the main line and we've been there for 13 years. And so those weekends totally sell out all the time. But for the Newtown studio to kind of sell out is really the community gets us now. We're ingrained. It's taken a bit, we opened during COVID, so it's taken a bit to get there. But the community gets us and what we're doing and what we're trying to kind of accomplish. And so that's really rewarding.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk all about that. Newtown is such a great community, and I still can't believe that you opened that studio in 2020 during the pandemic. Yes, giving yourself grace is a necessity for that, but I am so glad that it is finally, you're seeing some light because you have so much to offer, and it's such a great location too, which again, we'll talk.
Yeah.
So I always like to ask my guests, what is one significant challenge you've successfully navigated shaping your journey to where you are today?
Like such a big question. I think the biggest thing that shaped like my life and my perspective on life and kind of then like impacted everything around that is my husband. That's him. And so we met when we were 21 in college, and he was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy at like 22, 20, 23, roughly. I don't know. It all blurs together at this point. So that's a degenerative disease. And I think at a really young age, I find it to be like this blessing. Like it's not easy. It's not an easy journey, but at a really young age, we discovered what was really important in life: time with family, time with friends, time with each other, certainly. And so that has really shaped every decision that I made, right? So it really spurred me to become an entrepreneur, to really build a lifestyle that works for us and our family. And so kind of I keep going back to that top priority of spending time with him and my kids, and it enables me to do that. And so that is something that I think has really shaped every decision I've made since, very, very young.
And that's wonderful. And, I had the pleasure of hearing you speak at the Women of Influence lunch a couple weeks ago. I'm like, I don't even know what day it is right now.
I know, right?
And I did find that so that stuck with me a lot about your journey of your entrepreneurship, just really focusing on family. That's what every entrepreneur wants. You want to build a life around your family, not your work around your life,
For sure.
which is really awesome.
I mean, like, let's like not be like totally rose-colored glasses about this. Like when I first started, I was working way more than I ever worked in corporate America. Right?
Hmm.
In corporate America, I like would have the weekends off. Like once you're an entrepreneur, like that doesn't exist. Right. So like it was definitely like a journey to get here. And I had to kind of build the business to become what I wanted it to be.
Hmm.
So, I don't want to like Rosie out there, like,
No.
you have all this time on your hands.
I see some of the memes where it's like, when you're an entrepreneur, it's like you want to call your boss to call out sick when you realize you're the boss, or however that may,
There's no
may
sick
be.
days, there's no vacation days. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, so the Running My Mom, we start with a little bit of fitness. What is your favorite way to stay active?
So I have an Ergata, like the water rowing machine, and I have a sauna blanket that like really like helps me like like detoxify, and like very frankly, as an entrepreneur, I'm like always going. So like it's like forced quiet time. Totally truthful. I don't use them nearly as much as I either should and or would like to.
Right.
Um, but that's my go-to what I do.
I don't know that I've ever seen a water rowing machine. That's what I'm trying to think. I don't know. I'm like, ooh, a new kind of
It's
workout that
so good.
I
It's
thought I've heard of everything.
right, and it like folds up into my bathroom, and it's like really pretty.
Okay.
Has like a mid-century vibe, so it like totally fits. And
Ooh, I'm definitely going to be Googling that after.
yes, I love it.
Um, so how does maintaining your fitness routine contribute to both your motivation and really understanding the relationship between mental health and physical fitness?
So for me, it is a little bit less about the exercise and more about like the food that we consume. So we have this like amazing doctor. She is phenomenal. And she really talks a lot about like the impact of what you put in to your body and how that impacts literally everything. So we went plant based in 2020. And then like I think we went ingredient only, which basically means we don't eat any processed foods. And so my husband also has Crohn's. And so like the impact of food on him is like crazy. And then what I found is like it really started to impact me. Like I can't like just go out and like eat like a burger. Like it really, really impacts me. So a lot of what we do really revolves around that. So like Saturday mornings, we like drink coffee in bed, and we planned like a whole meal plan based on a CSA that we joined. So like whatever fruits and vegetables we're getting that week, like that's what we use and get really creative. And then we cook together every night. So it's like really social. We like put some music on and cook with, just Nick and I. A lot of times the kids are involved. And so it's really kind of like social, and kind of the impact of like how it brings our family together has been really interesting. So it's kind of the impact of health and mental health has, straight from our doctor, been
Yeah.
tremendous for us.
That's wonderful. And again, I don't think anyone's ever talked on that end. Everyone does talk about how important physical fitness really is for our mental health. But growing up, for me, I grew up in a big Italian family, and cooking was the center of everything. And you're right, the social part of it is such a big thing. And it is such like it's shaped to who I am today based on that something, big family dinners and, not just
Mm-hmm.
with my immediate family, but my extended family as well.
Yes.
And those cooking, like that's, you don't know in the moment how much it shapes you for the future. So you're doing such a great thing for your kids as well.
Well, what's really interesting to me is so we do Sunday dinner with my family that's local every Sunday. And we started a garden. And my niece was telling me, she was like, listen, Aunt Laura, you didn't have a midlife crisis. She's like, you had like a midlife blow up.
Yes, I love that. Oh my gosh. I
Right?
really feel like a lot of women are doing that. Like, I think so many women in, mid 30s to mid 40s are really just like finding themselves. And I love that. It's not a crisis, it's a glow up for sure.
Well, and like COVID really gave me the time to like slow down. I mean, the studio was closed for 3 months. Like, yes, that was hard. Like, I'm not like, not easy, right? But like, it really, like, 3 months with the kids, like, I haven't had that since they were babies. Like, it was like great to reconnect at that level. Like, we started the garden, I started to bake again. Those are things like I kind of like let go of. And, my kids are now 12 and 13. So they were of the age where they were becoming a bit more independent. So, like, yes, I was able to get more time in my life back to do some of these things. But like, I bake every week. Like,
Awesome.
like all these things, which are really kind of like fun and relaxing.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that will be a great intro to the parenthood, your kids. Tell us about your family.
So you can see the family behind me. So these are pictures, obviously in the studio, that are from throughout the years. So they are 12 and 13, Katie and Lorelai, and two girls. And yeah, I've been married for 21 years.
Wow.
So craziness.
That's awesome. And what do you think you were least prepared for in parenthood?
I think like the changes and like the changes that it requires. So like when they were babies, I was like, oh my God, this is the best phase ever. Like I love to snuggle, right? And then they became toddlers. I'm like, oh my God, no, this is the best stage ever. They have these like personality. And then they became kids. And I was like, oh my God, they have these like strong opinions. Like I love this. And now they're like teenagers. And I like see them like trying to figure out where they fit into the world. And I'm like, man, like this is the best. They're like fun people, right? So I think for me, like that all of the like each time like that they change and grow into these new phases, like it requires something different from me as a parent. Right. And so like that's kind of been like the biggest like, oh, yeah, okay, we're someplace new now, right? And kind of like navigating that so that I'm giving them what they need from me, like, and changing and making sure I'm giving them all the
Yeah, for sure. 'Cause and my kids are similar age gap of yours, even though yours are older than my kids. And I feel as though because they're kind of like linear and even like they're on the same level kind of in
yes.
their childhood development. And you're like, you figure something out and then they've moved to the next phase and you're like, wait, I just like,
I just figured this out.
just figured it out.
Nailed it. Right?
Now they're on a new
So
one.
true.
uh, so what do you think your parenting style is?
I would have to probably go with winging it is probably our parenting style. I think to be honest, like our kids are really different personalities. And so they each need different things from us at different times. They process information differently. They have different love languages. Like they really like they want different things out of this world. So like I don't necessarily think I have like a particular style. I think it kind of is kind of, figuring it out on the fly and
Yeah.
kind of figuring out what they need.
Love that. That's awesome. That's great. And what do you think one piece of advice you would give to other parents is?
My biggest piece of advice that I give new moms is like, don't buy into the mom guilt. Just don't prescribe to even like the concept of it. And if you don't accept the premise of it, it doesn't exist. So I don't know why I decided I don't have mom guilt. I remember like, so with my first, I went back at 6 weeks. That's like a long story. And I didn't love that, but that's where we were at the time. And so I was like, I'm not going to feel bad about this. Right. I just decided like I was always going back to work. Instead of feeling guilty about this, I am going to enjoy the time that I do have with her and I'm going to make the most of it. And so kind of just like being like, that's just like off the table. I like don't stress about it. Right. Like I do the best I can. I go to everything that I can make. I hit all the important things. And if I'm not there, someone else is there. They're never like, hanging out there by themselves. So I think like you deciding that you don't prescribe to it, then you don't have it.
Yeah. And that's so important for people to listen to. And I think it's just that's the biggest missing link in motherhood is that everybody thinks they have to be like that this mom or that mom or the mom up the street, and it's like, no, what works for your family? And if you're doing the best that you can, which 99.9% of us really are, and that's all that your kids can ask for. And what works for your family might not work for someone else's family, and I think that's something
Absolutely.
that a lot of people forget as well. So I love that the mom guilt is.
I'm in a book club with all
Mhm.
other moms. And it's really fun. It's just like time like away from the kids that we
Mhm.
do, mostly drink wine. Maybe read a book or two. I don't know.
Mhm.
And one of them is like, yeah, like you have no problem saying no. And I'm like, I really do. Right. Like no to 10 sports. Right.
Mhm.
Like what we have prioritized as a family is we eat dinner together as a family. So almost every night we still eat dinner together as a family.
So important.
And which is like, and also like a little unheard of at their ages. And like, I have no problem saying no. I don't feel guilty about it because you know what? Like, we have decided what's important to us is healthy nutrition, spending time together, being social, all of these things. And so saying no to other things makes the room for.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, let's get into Ivory Tree Portraits and Studio. So you tell us you have a background in marketing. And so how did a marketing background turn into a photography business?
Right. So interestingly enough, I am not a photographer. I've never shot. I don't pick up a camera. I like don't know how. I just don't. So like I built this entire business really around the perspective of being a mom, right? So like I'm not like emotionally tied to like this image is so technically perfect. What I really look at is like that's the face that they make, right? Like that's who they are, right? Like if I look at some of these, like if you look at this image of them giggling and whispering to each other, that's like a memory because that's what they do all day every day. Right.
Mhm.
So I put that one up on my wall because it means something to me. So, like, I built this business from a mom's perspective rather than from a photographer's perspective. So I'm not like, I love my craft and I'm a really good photographer and I'm going to go out there and give you beautiful images. I'm like, you know what? I'm a busy working mom. I'm going to build an experience that makes it quick and easy for you that you get amazing memories and beautiful images from.
Mhm.
That really
Yeah.
shifted it.
Right. And that is so different than like most of the pose, hey, do this, do that. And I definitely noticed that working in your studio with, my crazy children or like, and I have like such anxiety when I'm watching, I'm like trying to telepath to my kids, like just sit there for a minute. But, then the photos come back and it's just, you're like, oh yeah, this is so cute.
I mean, we hear it all the time. They're like, there's no way you got anything. My
Yeah.
kids are crazy. Or, two is a really tough age. We're going to wait. We're not going to do it right now. Like, we'll do it when the kids are easier. I'm like, don't wait. Because the thing is that you as a mom, you walk in, you're like, oh my God, you have to be good. Don't break anything. Smile. Don't get anything on your clothes. Oh my God, like, did you eat before? Right? Like all the things. And I always tell mom, it's like, mom, like take a deep breath, relax, because they're picking up on your energy.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you come in and are like, oh, you know what? We're here to have fun and let us do the hard work, right? And that hard lift and let them have fun. Right. Like, I mean, you know this, like there's like okay teachers, there's good teachers, and there's great teachers.
Right.
Right. And the great teachers aren't like, I said sit down, right? They're not like the authoritarian. Like, and so this is like our whole kid-led philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Like this is why we have such a strong stance on this, so that moms can have fun when they come into the studio because kids can.
Yeah, and we actually took a lot of when we did the grandparent photos, because we got to watch a lot of it because they were getting pictures, obviously, with the grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that the photographers were doing or saying or getting the kids to kind of look, we took a lot of that into just our like daily routine. Like we always say, like, say ice cream or say this or, and it gets their attention. So I really
Yes.
did love that. Your photographers are so great with kids. So to kind of go in a little bit of a different route, you opened the Newtown studio, which is the one that I am closest to, in the middle sort of the pandemic. So talk about that. How did you overcome it?
Yeah.
What challenges did you face?
So like crazy, right?
Hmm.
But to be fair, like during COVID, I had time to like decompress and
Hmm.
really like strategize and plan because I wasn't like every day, all day, like in the business. So it really gave me the opportunity to think about the growth strategy for it. And, a second studio was like kind of like on the docket, when are we going to do it? When are we ready? All of the things. And I just remember like I was at dinner one day and like, Nick and the kids and I are sitting there and it's like, I think it's time. He's like, is it time? And I was like, I think it might be time. And we're knee deep in the middle of the pandemic. Mask mandate lifted the week we had our grand opening. So our grand opening was like scheduled sessions. It wasn't like big balloons and everybody come, which is what we did like when we opened Wayne. It was really like everybody gets 10-minute spots so we can clean the studio in between. And like, it wasn't this whole huge, like, big, huge thing. And I think the biggest thing is I underestimated how long it would take the world to come back together. Right. Because
Hmm.
yes, everybody started to go out and about, but there were no festivals. There were no like community events. There were no like people weren't getting together in crowds or doing like big things. And it took a really like years to kind of come back to a place where people felt comfortable with that. And so then by the time we're there, it's like, well, you're like old news. You've been here for like 2 years. Right.
You're like, wait, no.
Right. So like it took much longer on that front because that's a big way to get your name out in the community, get your reputation out there in the community, is to be a part of the community. And so when the community wasn't doing all of these things, like that I think was like the hardest thing that I hadn't anticipated.
Yeah. So, I mean, community is such a huge part of building your business. Like, so how do you like to try to incorporate it into, your studio, but also how did you kind of work that into the Newtown studio without a community, I guess, for the
Right.
first 2 years?
So what's interesting to me is community is really important to me, like as a person, right? Like I think it's really critical that I surround my girls with people who are driven at whatever they do, right? Like are enthusiastic, are positive, like are like total rock stars in all of their pieces of life. It doesn't matter what they do as long as they're passionate about what they're doing. And for my girls to see really empowered women like that is super important to me, right? It's not just me, it's, like my extended family, but it's also like the people that we bring into the house, who we go and see, right? Like, I think that, I mean, to be fair, it's like who I surround myself with. So, like, my kids by natural extension. So, that is like super ingrained into just like the culture of the studio. So, some of the things that we do are we support literally like every silent auction out there. We are like, yes, we will donate to that. Like, that's like who we are. Like, it's something I teach my kids. Like, be more than generous. It's something that my parents taught me, right? Like, they're very generous with their time, with their resources, with like everything we have. And it's just like, it's, you know, a little bit like it's, and it's not because I feel like I'm going to get it back. It's because it's the right thing to do. Right. So like be generous is something that I teach kids. So like then the studio is obviously generous in that capacity. I
Yeah.
think that, so we do all of that. And then we do charity events. So we pick 3 each year that we really support. And some of them are community driven, some of them are specific to us. So we did last year, we did Kisses for Kyle. So our creative director's cousin is, I think, 1 year almost cancer free. She was 2 when she was diagnosed. So we did that charity for her. And that was something that was really important. So you'll see her all over Instagram as well. But we're really, really proud of the fight that she put out there and overcoming that. And then we did SPCA, Pennsylvania ASPCA.
Yeah.
That was hard for me. I have 2 puppies. I always grew up with dogs. And so that was something, they're very much furry family members. So that was something that was a lot of our, you know, like clients who come have puppies. So we got to do that event. So that was really great. We did grandparent sessions for Alzheimer's. So that was kind of for my cousin who is helping my uncle through his journey there. And so that was something like really obviously very close and personal. And the way we show love in the studio is obviously through photography and through images. So like this is like our little like love letter back out to the community where it's donated to a good cause, but we're really showcasing our gift and our love that way. And so that's something that like is really ingrained into like we sit down each year as a team and are like, what are the sessions going to be next year? Who do we want to donate to? Who do we kind of want to align ourselves with? What makes sense? And so we're really kind of proud of those events.
Yeah, and that is something that was really cool to learn about your studio and just, you know, with the grandparents. I was saying how my gram had Alzheimer's and it was, you know, just something that you connect with and you know, a sad way to connect, but a way to connect and just having the grandparent photos. I know like I mean my family is huge on taking photos. My husband's family, not so much. And my mother-in-law just like still always talks about those photos. And that was, you know, back almost 6 months ago. And I know that they're just so cherished for her. So it's just something that, you know, they have forever and not something you always get the opportunity to do. So I love that you guys do that. Which brings me to my next thing. At the women's conference this year, one of the things that was said about you is that you maintain a 90% client return rate. What do you kind of attribute? That's awesome. Like, how do you attribute this loyalty to, you know, what do you think? What's the secret sauce for it?
I really attribute it to 2 things, consistency and easy, right? So I'm a busy working mom. We cater to busy parents. It's got to be easy to book. It's got to be easy to come to the session. It's got to be easy for the kids at the session, easy to order after, right? Like, check, check, check. Like, it's the only way. Like, I remember in corporate America, I was in meetings from 8 until 5. If I had to stop and get on the phone and then figure out a location and then 15 phone calls later and a return voicemail, and like, I'd be like, I don't have the capacity for this. Right. So kind of building the business to make it as easy, quick and easy as possible. And then just the consistency. Like, so, I mean, these images here have been taken over 13 years, multiple different photographers, and they all look consistent. So number one, when you do photography, annual photos, it's an investment. It's an investment of your time, not just for the session, but like making sure everybody's hair is cut and brushed, and we have the shoes and we have the dresses or the the outfits, and we have what we need, and I've gotten my nails done, and I've had time to brush my hair, and all of the things that happen to prepare for it, which are not easy, right? And then I want to be able to show up when it is scheduled. I don't want somebody to like, oh, I can't do it, or it's raining, or like any of those things. Like, so like all that's off the table with our studio. Like, date is the date, right? And so kind of just making sure it's easy and consistent. People know what to expect. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know what the pricing structure looks like. I'm not going to be surprised, right? It's not going to cause a fight in the house because last year was one thing and now it's something else. Like all of these things, like just easy.
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's kind of that's really, and obviously, like, I mean, like we produce beautiful images, right? But our creative director Kaylee, who you worked with,
Yes.
she reviews every image that goes out of the studio to ensure it is an ivory tree image. So it looks like ivory tree and has the detail to it. So it's really important to us
Yeah.
that not just the experience are consistent, but that the images are totally consistent.
So how do you kind of balance that, like the creativity, the business demands, and then maintaining the unique identity of Ivory Tree Portraits?
So it's like we're like simple in like kind of like the hardest way possible, right? So we're like modern and timeless, right? We always have our ivory wall for ivory tree, which is just like super neutral, right? And looks good. We did so much research for a color that looks good on all different skin tones.
Yeah.
We always have an interior design wall. So whatever's trending within the interior design industry, that's what we have going. And then we have our whitewashed brick wall, which gives kind of just like a lot of texture to it. And then we have a wallpaper wall, and that we change out and we can be a bit more bold. So again, it's whatever's on trend and seasonal, but still all things that you would find in your home. That way, when you put them up in your home, it looks really natural. We don't do like stuff, because the idea is that all of these images are really focused on capturing the personality of the kids and the connection of the family. It's not about what the background looks like or what the stuff looks like. That's how you get really dated images really quickly, when there's a lot of like noise to it.
Yeah, and that was definitely something I I mean, I'm like, I don't think that we did go in a studio maybe once prior to going into yours, but I really felt it was so interesting and like such a different experience of getting the pictures back. And I was like, oh my gosh, these, when you say it exactly like that, it's like, yeah, the other things that you get, it's like the background is the main event and then there's the family. And for yours, it's the family and then the background, which is a really cool thing
Yes.
to have. And not very many people have that, which I love.
Yeah, it's really the core of who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my concept is that we are building self-confidence through these kids by celebrating what makes them special and unique, whether it is individually and or as a family and the family's connection or the siblings connection. What, like, we're capturing that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we have to celebrate that. Like, it's really important to me that kids walk in and they see pictures on the wall in the studio of a family that looks like theirs, right? So, like, whether it's like my husband's in a wheelchair and there's pictures of people in a wheelchair, right? There's pictures of different families that might have two moms, two dads, might have three grandparents, 10 grandparents, all the different kind of combinations of what a family looks like. And they see one that looks like theirs,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because every family is different, every family is unique. And that's like through like our pricing structure. We don't have packages because no two families look alike. You don't want like two 8x10s, one for each grandmother. Well, you might have four grandparents, right? Like, you might have four different sets. You might have two different sets of moms. You might have two different sets of dads. You might have two moms, three dads, like all the different pieces. So, like, we don't have packages because I'm not putting anybody into a shoebox. It's
Yeah.
not going to celebrate who they are.
I love that. That's awesome. So let's kind of pivot again to some questions about women in business, because that is how we connected at the Women's
Yes.
Leadership. And I love that you are an all women team. So what do you think impact this had on your business? How did you decide that you were going to have an all women team? Was this an original idea when you started the business, or how did that kind of come to be?
It just honestly kind of naturally happened. It was not intentional. I did not go and be like, I will only hire women. Like, no. Like, and to be fair, like, if there was like a really incredible man that like hit all of the buckets, like, I would totally hire.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what is important is that I'm creating stable jobs, right, that have a lot of flexibility to them and are really empowering for, and it tends to be women,
Mm-hmm.
for women who um, can build a schedule that works for them. That makes, like, I go back, like, I define success based on my lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what is a schedule that works for them? it obviously still has to work for the studio. Like, we're not just like free for all, right? But like,
Yes.
but like really looking at what do you want out of life? What does success mean for you? And then growing a career path around and a schedule around what works for you. So we've had team members that have shifted and moved, and weekends, then weekdays, then full time, then part time. And as their life changes and as their things change and as their kids have different needs or their parents have different needs, we have been able to kind of adjust what their role is within the studio to fit what their changing needs are. And that's been really empowering for me. Like, define success for yourself, my big thing, right? And then how
Yes.
can I help you get there? Like, that's really important to me.
Right. And that's really important, especially for women, because there are so many changes that happen in their life. And something, before becoming a mom, I didn't realize the big impact that it had on women's career of having children, and how you just don't think about, like, if you have 3 kids, that's a lot of time that you're not being present per se in the business world. And that can really kind of affect, if you're in competition with a man and they are there for that time. But I think that's wonderful that you're allowing women to have the space to step back, step in, step over, hop around, however it may be.
And change, right? Like,
Right.
I certainly have more time now than I did when my kids were babies,
Hmm.
right? And so, like, yeah, it's really important to me.
And also, that was something that my friend Brittany, who is also a photographer in the area, we were talking about with your speech that you talked about. It made me think of the Define Success letter to yourself, and to look back on it, and how, especially as women, we kind of think that we're failing a lot of times. And if you kind of want to talk a little bit about that, I think that would be really important for people to hear, because it
Yes,
was just something that you're like, oh yeah, you need to hear that.
you need to do that. So, like, I always say, write down what success means to you. Right. And that can change, right? And for some people, it's a revenue number. Some people, it's a profit number. Some people, it is a job title. Some people, it is, I want to start a side hustle. I want to take that side hustle into my full time gig. Like, whatever that is for you, like, write it down, because things get hard. Like, whether you're in corporate America, whether you're in a school, whether you're like, as an entrepreneur, like, things get hard all the time in a ton of different capacities. And it's easy to be like, oh my God, worst ever. Right. And then you're like, oh, I didn't actually really want that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, yes, like, I lost that job, but like, I didn't really want that job. I didn't want that. Or man, I did really want that. Right. And how am I going to get there? Right. So, like, defining success for yourself, I think, rather than letting other people define it for you. Right. So I think it's easy in corporate America to be like, okay, well, the next step is, and then the next step is, and then the next step is. And it's like, well, wait a second. I'm now traveling, 90% of the time. And like, I don't even want that.
Hmm.
Right. So defining success for yourself, writing it down so that when things get hard, you can go back and be like, hey, is this still, it's what I did when I decided to open the Newtown studio. Like, when I open the Newtown studio, am I still going to be able to do all of the things that I want to do as I have defined success for myself and my family? Right. And if the answers are yes, right, then yeah, do it. Right. If the answers are like, I don't know, right? Like, maybe now's not the time. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
the answer is no. It might just mean like not now.
Yeah. And I definitely reflected on that after, and my husband and I have talked like a lot about just in general that kind of topic, because he's at a point in his career where he kind of got to where he wanted to be and doing all the things that he wanted to do. And then he's kind of like, okay, well, now what? And it's like, okay, now you have to rewrite what is your success now that you've gotten to this, but also give yourself credit, because I think a lot of the times once we get to that point, we don't really recognize, ourselves from maybe 10 years ago of this is what we really, really wanted. And it's really important that, all the struggles that we went through to get to where we are. And then you're like there and you're like, okay, well, like I'm here. Now what? And you're like, no, you are here. That's good. Give yourself like a round of applause.
So I had this amazing mentor. I worked with her in 3 different companies and from a very, very young age. And just, I think she really helped shape my career. And one of the things that she did was my very first bonus, like, to be fair, like, it wasn't huge, right? Like, but it was my very first bonus. And she was like, I want you, whatever you do with this, maybe you save it, maybe whatever. She's like, I want you to buy something with it. And I want you to be able to go back and be like, I earned that. Right. To be fair, it was a black bag. I still have it. Right. I cannot give it away. I mean, I don't use it. It's been, 20 years. Right. But I still have it. And that is like a memory for me of a successful moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so with every big milestone, I get myself something, which is a visual reminder to myself of like, I accomplished that. I did that. Right. And so I think that that's really important. I just saw this thing and it was like some meme. Right. And this woman is like, my mom celebrated my career successes. Like she celebrated a wedding and a birth of my kid. Right. And I was like, I'm going to do, like, I'm doing that. Like, I have done that in little pieces, but I want to take that and celebrate big, successful career wins in the same way that we celebrate a marriage or a birth of a child, because they are like so incredibly important. And I feel like, to your point, as women, we don't always, we get there and we're like, what's next? Instead of being like, go me.
Right. Yeah. I know. When I got home, I wrote out all of my, this is what I, because it, and then this weekend I was having one of those, oh my God, I'm failing at everything. Like I'm not good at anything that I do. And I'm like, okay, let me look back at this paper and be like, okay.
Yes.
So speaking of the women of influence, how do you think being recognized as, as a woman of influence, getting an award for that, how do you think it impacted maybe your approach to leadership and maybe even business strategy?
So I think like entrepreneurship can be like a little lonely, right? Like when you're in a workforce, you get annual reviews, you get bonuses, you get promotions, you get constant feedback. Like when you're the owner of a business, you get the people who are upset for whatever reason, right? As the only feedback I mean, now to be fair, like we get a ton of positive feedback too and a lot of 5-star reviews, but like it's all like, it's not about like the strategy, right? It's not about like, hey, you're doing good things out there. So like to be recognized as an entrepreneur is like, it's incredibly motivating. Like, man, like people get what I'm trying to do, right? Like it's incredibly empowering to be like, okay, I am on the right path. I am like doing something here that means something to people. Like it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And it really, because I had just started my podcast and it was kind of new, and that really, I had such imposter syndrome about it. And I feel like that award was such a significant pivot in my mindset, I guess, because I remember going back to teaching and the next day, and one of my best friend at work was like, okay, well, like now what? Like, let's think about what your next steps, like, this was a big award for you, and now let's do something with that. And it, opened up a lot of different doors and gave me so much more confidence of just being like, okay, I can do this or whatever it is. And so I mean, I'm sure amazing for someone that's been in it for so long to just like, and then speaking this year was awesome. Your speech was amazing, as I said.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to another woman aspiring to start her own business?
I think going into it knowing that it's going to be hard. Right. I think that I went into it with like rose colored glasses. Like, to be fair, as I approach most things in life, because I'm an eternal optimist, right? So like, I think that that's a trait that you need to be an entrepreneur, right? Like, I think you need to be like, when things get tough, you're like, oh, it's going to get better, right? Like, you have to have that mentality in order to survive all of the things. So, but I think that then it can be like a little bit blinding, right? Where you go and you're like, oh my God, what just happened? Not what I thought it was going to be. This is so much harder. It is so many more hours. There's so many more demands. The stress level is like, I put the food on the table for the team, right? Like, this isn't like, oh, we missed our number and I don't get my quarterly bonus.
Right.
This is like, Like, this is how people live and eat and, like provide for their families. Like, that's a very different weight to carry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think kind of understanding that it's going to be tough. And as entrepreneurs, we are trained to be like, everything is beautiful. It's great. Sales are fine, right? Like, and you're like cringing behind the scenes. Like, so I think that like understanding that it's hard and it takes time and it takes a lot of effort. And I think, kind of going back to my speech, like knowing your village, because things are going to be hard. Who can you count on? Who
Mm-hmm.
can you count on when you are like crumbling because, somebody like crushed your soul today, right? And man, you really messed something up. And like, in corporate America, you can mess stuff up and like, there might be a ripple, maybe nobody notices. But if you mess up like a little bit when you are in a small business, like the ripples are huge. It
Mm-hmm.
is instantly felt. And successes are as well, right? Like it's like both sides, right? Like you're like, man, I really can impact things. Like I can do something and I can see the impact today, right? But like know your village. Like who are you going to go to when things get tough? Who are the people who are going to pump you up? Who are the people who are going to pick up your kids because you got called into something that you have to do, right? Like who's going to help you like, paint the studio because something happened? Like who's going to show up for all of the things and like and kind of go into it knowing who they are and making sure you have the support that you need because you're gonna need it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, oh my gosh, so much great information that you gave us. So, looking ahead, what are your goals for Ivory Tree Portraits and for yourself as a business leader?
For sure. So I think for me, what I really would love is for the Newtown studio to become like a household name, just like it is in Wayne. That's like really my focus. And I think that like just kind of continuing down that path and like kind of still delivering all of these like amazing sessions to folks and really having kind of Bucks understand what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish and like how we're like trying to make a difference in the community. It's kind of my big goal for this
I
coming year.
love that. Well, and I know you will because your studio is wonderful. Your location is just beautifully set in the center of Newtown. And, I'm so excited to watch you grow and just have even more success. So I think that will be a great spot to end it. So that's gonna cheers. I know I'm like I have my wine upstairs. I was like I said, rushing around to get my children to bed, so I forgot to bring it down. But all right. Well, that's gonna bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. What an incredible conversation with the amazing Lara Aman Matty. That's amazing. Her passion for creating authentic, lasting memories through Ivory Tree Portraits is truly inspiring, and her dedication to empowering women in business is a testament to what can be achieved when we support and uplift each other. If you are inspired as inspired as I am, be sure to check out Ivory Tree Portraits for your next family photo session. As my own personal experience, it's a wonderful experience that you will not want to miss. And remember, life's moments are fleeting, but the memories we create and capture will last forever. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can follow me on Instagram at @therunningwinemom_. And Lara, where can the listeners find you?
Absolutely, at Ivory Tree Portraits.
Awesome. And I will link all that. Thank you so much for this today. This was
Thank you so
wonderful.
much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday.